Crocodile Paradox. Let's say a crocodile has taken your child. You're standing at the riverbank, your heart racing, your breath unsteady. The crocodile stares at you with its cold, unblinking eyes and says, "I will return your child if and only if you correctly predict what I will do next." At this moment, your world comes to a halt. You realize this is not just a life or death situation, but a logical trap. No matter what you say, you're stepping into a paradox. This dilemma has puzzled philosophers and thinkers for centuries. It's not just a question of a predator and its prey, it's a deep examination of knowledge, logic, and the limits of certainty. Let's carefully analyze this intricate web of reasoning. You have two possible responses to give the crocodile. Consider the first situation. In this situation, you predict that the crocodile will return your child. If the crocodile intends to return your child, your prediction is accurate, and the crocodile fulfills its promise. Everything fits, and your child is safe. But if the crocodile plans to keep your child, your prediction is incorrect, and the crocodile has no obligation to return the child. In this case, everything remains logically consistent because the outcome is entirely based on whether your prediction matches the crocodile's intention. The true paradox arises in the second situation. In this situation, you predict that the crocodile will not return your child. If the crocodile decides to keep the child, your prediction is correct, but now the crocodile is forced to return the child because your prediction was right. This creates a contradiction, because the crocodile cannot both keep the child and fulfill its promise to return them when your prediction is accurate. On the other hand, if the crocodile intends to return the child, your prediction is incorrect, and according to the terms of the agreement, the crocodile should not have returned the child in the first place. In either case, the crocodile is caught in a logical contradiction. So what is actually happening here? The crocodile paradox is a classic example of a self-referential paradox, where a statement refers to itself in a way that makes the situation impossible to resolve. It's similar to the well-known liar's paradox, where someone states this statement is false. If the statement is true, then it must be false. But if it is false, then it must be true. The crocodile paradox functions on this same unstable logic, where the crocodile's promise collapses under its own conditions. But beyond being a logical riddle, the crocodile paradox also raises deeper philosophical issues at its core. It is about the nature of promises, truth, and trust. If a promise creates a scenario where it is logically impossible to keep, is it truly a promise at all? And if a situation is built on contradictory principles, can any outcome genuinely be fair or just? In some ways, the paradox mirrors real-life situations where agreements are made on faulty assumptions. Consider legal contracts filled with loopholes, political promises made with conflicting conditions, or even personal struggles where every choice seems to have negative consequences. The crocodile paradox is not just an intellectual puzzle. It is a reflection of the complexity and flaws in the commitments we make and the expectations we hold. But let's not overlook the crocodile. In this scenario, the paradox also highlights something about power and control. The crocodile is not just a passive player in this riddle, it is the designer of the trap by structuring the rules in a way that ensures contradiction. The crocodile guarantees that no answer can fully satisfy the agreement. In a broader sense, it symbolizes authority systems or structures where rules are intentionally designed to maintain control, even when logic and fairness suggest otherwise. So can this paradox ever be resolved? Philosophers have debated this for centuries, and the common conclusion is no. The paradox is not meant to have a definitive answer, because its purpose is not to be solved, but to reveal the problem itself. It is a thought experiment meant to show the limitations of language logic and our perceptions of fairness and promises. But perhaps the most valuable insight from the Crocodile Paradox is this. Not every question has a clear answer. Not every issue can be resolved with logic alone, and sometimes the real power is not in solving the puzzle, but in recognizing the trap it presents. So if you ever find yourself standing before a crocodile, offering a deal that seems impossible to fulfill, remember this paradox. Sometimes the game is set up against you from the start, and the only way to win is to recognize the paradox for what it truly is. A carefully designed trap disguised as a choice. Paradox of choice. Imagine stepping into an ice cream shop. You're craving something sweet and ready to indulge, but instead of the usual 5 or 6 flavors, you're met with 50 options. Chocolate vanilla pistachio, salted caramel mango, sorbet rocky road, and so many more. At first, you're excited, but as you try to decide, you start to feel overwhelmed. You second-guess yourself. What if you pick pistachio, but miss out on salted caramel? What if rocky road would have been the perfect choice? Suddenly, what should have been a simple and enjoyable decision turns into a stressful and exhausting experience. This is the paradox of choice. The idea that while having more options might seem like a good thing, it can actually make us less happy, more anxious, and ultimately less satisfied with the choices we make. It's a concept that challenges one of the biggest assumptions in modern society, that more choices always mean more freedom and better outcomes. The paradox of choice was made famous by psychologist Barry Schwartz, who argued that too many choices can leave us feeling paralyzed. When faced with an overwhelming number of options, we often struggle to make a decision. At all, think about how many times you've spent ages scrolling through a streaming platform, unable to pick a movie, only to end up rewatching something familiar. The more options we have, the harder it becomes to decide, because each choice carries the fear of missing out on something better. But the paradox doesn't stop at indecision. It also affects how satisfied we feel after we finally make a choice. Let's go back to the ice cream shop. You eventually settle on salted caramel, but as you eat it, you can't help but wonder if pistachio would have been even better. Even though the salted caramel is delicious, your enjoyment is reduced by the thought of what you might have missed. This is called post-decision regret, and it's one of the key ways the paradox of choice undermines our happiness. One reason for this is something psychologists call opportunity cost. Every time we make a choice, we're also choosing not to do something else when there are only a few options. The opportunity cost feels small, but when there are dozens or even hundreds of choices, the cost of what we didn't pick feels enormous. We become highly aware of the alternatives we passed up, making it harder to fully enjoy the option we did choose. Another factor at play is our expectations. The more options we have, the higher our expectations become. If you only have 3 ice cream flavors to choose from, you might just be happy with whatever you get. But when there are 50, you expect to find the perfect flavor, the one that will completely satisfy you. And if the salted caramel doesn't meet that unrealistic level of perfection, you feel disappointed, not because it wasn't good, but because it wasn't the absolute best. The paradox of choice reveals that having more options doesn't just increase our freedom, it also increases our potential for disappointment. Interestingly, this paradox doesn't affect everyone. In the same way, some people known as maximizers feel the need to find the absolute best option in every situation. Maximizers are the ones who read hundreds of reviews before buying a phone, or spend hours researching restaurants before choosing where to eat. While being thorough might seem beneficial, it often leads to stress and dissatisfaction because maximizers constantly worry about whether they made the right choice. On the other hand, satisficers are people who look for an option that is good enough. They make decisions quickly without obsessing over what they might have missed, which often makes them happier and more at peace. The paradox of choice has deep implications for how we live. In today's world, we are bombarded with endless choices: what to eat, what to wear, what to watch, where to live, who to date, what career to pursue on the surface. Having so many options seems empowering, but in reality, it can lead to decision fatigue, a state where the sheer mental effort of making choices leaves us drained and less capable of making good decisions. So how can we deal with the paradox of choice? One approach is to embrace the idea of good enough instead of fixating on finding the perfect option. We can learn to appreciate the choices we make and let go of the ones we didn't pick. Another strategy is to set limits on how many options we consider. For example, instead of endlessly scrolling through a streaming platform, we can decide to choose from the first 5 movies we see. By simplifying our decision-making process, we reduce stress and increase satisfaction. The paradox of choice also offers a deeper lesson about happiness. True happiness doesn't come from having unlimited options. It comes from being present and content with the choices we make. It reminds us that real freedom isn't about having endless possibilities. It's about having the confidence and clarity to choose without regret. In the end, the paradox of choice isn't just about ice cream flavors or movie selections. It's a reflection of how we navigate modern life. It challenges us to rethink our beliefs about freedom and happiness, and to realize that sometimes less really is more. By understanding this paradox, we can make better decisions, experience greater peace of mind, and ultimately live more fulfilling lives. Card Paradox. Paradox picture holding a simple card with 2 statements written on either side. On one side, it says, "The statement on the other side of this card is true." When you flip it over, the other side it says, "The statement on the other side of this card is false." At first, this might seem like a harmless little puzzle, but as you start to think it through, you quickly realize something astonishing. It doesn't make sense. This is the card Paradox, a thought experiment that challenges our understanding of truth, logic, and self-reference. The card Paradox belongs to a family of puzzles known as self-reference paradoxes. These are scenarios where a statement refers to itself in a way that creates a logical contradiction. The paradox on the card works like this. If the statement on the first side is true, the statement on the other side is true. Then the statement on the other side is false, must also be true. But if that's true, then the first statement must be false. And if the first statement is false, then the second statement becomes false as well. Looping us back to the first, it's a never-ending cycle of contradictions with no resolution at its core. The card paradox forces us to confront the limits of our logical systems. Our brains are wired to think in terms of true and false, yes and no. But self-referential paradoxes like this one reveal that even the simplest logical structures can break down when they turn inward on themselves. The card paradox isn't just a quirky brain teaser. It's a profound challenge to the way we think about truth and meaning. To understand why this paradox is so significant, let's dig deeper into what it teaches us about logic in formal systems. A statement is typically either true or false. This is known as the law of the excluded middle. But the card paradox defies this principle by creating a situation where neither truth nor falsehood seems to apply. Instead, the statements feed into each other in an endless loop. This breakdown of logic is what makes the paradox so intriguing and so unsettling. One of the most famous self-referential paradoxes, the liar's paradox, works in a similar way. It's the statement, "This sentence is false." If the sentence is true, then it must be false. But if it's false, then it must be true. Like the card paradox, the liar's paradox reveals the fragility of logic. ICAL systems when faced with self-reference. The card paradox takes this idea a step further by involving two statements that rely on each other rather than a single statement referring to itself. Philosophers and logicians have grappled with these kinds of paradoxes for centuries. In the early 20th century, the mathematician Kurt Gödel made a groundbreaking discovery: any sufficiently complex formal system contains statements that are true but unprovable within the system itself. Gödel's incompleteness theorems, as they're called, show that no logical system can be both complete and consistent. The card paradox is a playful example of this principle, highlighting the inherent limitations of logical reasoning. But the implications of the card paradox go beyond formal logic. It also raises fascinating questions about language and meaning. When we communicate, we rely on shared definitions and assumptions to convey ideas. But the card paradox demonstrates how language can create contradictions that defy resolution. It's a reminder that even the words and concepts we take for granted can break down under close scrutiny. The paradox also has psychological dimensions. It forces us to confront uncertainty and ambiguity, two things that humans are notoriously uncomfortable with. Our natural instinct is to resolve contradictions and find clarity. But the card paradox denies us that resolution, leaving us in a state of cognitive dissonance. This can be frustrating, but it's also an opportunity to expand our thinking and embrace complexity. So what can we learn from the card paradox? First, it teaches us to question our assumptions about truth and logic. It shows that even the most basic ideas can become deeply complex when viewed from a new perspective. Second, it challenges us to think critically about self-reference and the ways it shapes our understanding of the world. And finally, it reminds us to embrace ambiguity as a natural part of life. Not every question has a clear answer, and sometimes the journey of exploring a paradox is more valuable than resolving it. The card paradox isn't just a clever puzzle. It's a gateway to some of the deepest questions about logic, language, and the human mind. It invites us to think beyond binary categories, to explore the limits of knowledge, and to appreciate the beauty of contradictions. So the next time you see a simple card with two statements, remember, it's not just a piece of paper. It's an invitation to expand your understanding of the universe. And that's a paradox worth pondering. Barber Paradox. Imagine a small town with a peculiar rule. There is only one barber, and this barber shaves everyone in town who does not shave themselves. The rule is simple and absolute. The barber must shave all those who don't shave themselves, and only those who don't shave themselves. But here's the question: who shaves the barber? At first glance, it seems like there should be a straightforward answer, but as you think it through, the situation becomes impossible. If the barber shaves himself, he violates the rule, because the barber is only supposed to shave those who don't shave themselves. But if the barber doesn't shave himself, then he must follow the rule and shave himself, because he shaves everyone who doesn't. No matter how you approach it, the barber ends up trapped in a logical contradiction. This is the Barber Paradox. The Barber Paradox was introduced by British mathematician and philosopher Bertrand Russell, to illustrate a deeper issue in the foundations of logic and mathematics on the surface. It's a playful thought experiment, but it actually points to a serious problem. What happens when a set or system refers to itself? In this case, the barber's shaving rule creates a self-referential loop that cannot be resolved without breaking its own logic. To understand the paradox more deeply, let's step back and look at what's happening here. The barber's job is defined by a rule. He must shave all, and only those who do not shave themselves. This rule divides the townspeople into two groups, those who shave themselves and those who don't. But when we try to include the barber in one of these groups, the rule collapses. If he shaves himself, he belongs to the group of people who shave themselves, which means he shouldn't be shaving himself. If he doesn't shave himself, he belongs to the group of people who don't shave themselves, which means he should shave himself. There's no way for the barber to follow the rule without creating a contradiction at its core. The Barber Paradox is about self-reference. What happens when a rule or system applies to itself? It's a close relative of the liar's paradox, where a statement like "this sentence is false" creates a similar loop of contradiction. Both paradoxes show how self-reference can break the rules of logic, creating situations where no consistent solution exists. But the Barber Paradox isn't just a quirky thought experiment. It has profound implications for mathematics, philosophy, and even computer science. Bertrand Russell used it to highlight a problem with set theory, a branch of mathematics that deals with collections of objects. In the early 20th century, mathematicians believed that any logical statement about sets should make sense. For example, you could talk about the set of all chairs or the set of all numbers, but Russell noticed a problem when he considered the set of all sets. At first, this idea seems harmless. Most sets don't contain themselves. For example, the set of all apples doesn't include itself. It's a set, not an apple, but when you try to define the set of all sets that don't contain themselves, you run into a problem. Does this set contain itself? If it does, then by definition, it shouldn't. And if it doesn't, then by definition, it should. This contradiction, known as Russell's paradox, shook the foundations of mathematics and forced mathematicians to rethink how they defined sets and logical systems. The Barber Paradox is a simplified version of this problem designed to make the issue easier to understand. It shows how seemingly simple rules can create profound contradictions when they're applied to themselves. This has practical implications far beyond mathematics and computer science. For example, self-referential systems can create bugs or crashes. A program that tries to analyze itself might run into infinite loops or contradictions, just like the barber. The paradox also has philosophical implications, especially when it comes to understanding the limits of logic and language. We often assume that logic is the ultimate tool for making sense of the world. But paradoxes like this one show that even logic has its boundaries. Self-reference is everywhere in human thought, from the way we describe ourselves to the way we construct systems of rules. The Barber Paradox reminds us that these systems are not always as solid as they seem. So what's the solution to the Barber Paradox? The short answer is that there isn't one. Not within the rules of the paradox itself. The only way to resolve the contradiction is to change the rules. In the case of mathematics, Russell's paradox led to the development of new systems like set theories that avoid self-referential definitions in everyday life. The lesson is that some problems can't be solved within their own frameworks. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to step back and rethink the assumptions that created the problem in the first place. The Barber Paradox may seem like a small, playful puzzle, but it opens the door to some of the most profound questions about logic reasoning and the way we make sense of the world. It challenges us to think critically about the systems we create and the assumptions we take for granted. And perhaps most importantly, it shows us that even the simplest ideas can contain hidden depths, paradoxes that force us to see the world in a completely new way. Twin paradox. Science fiction often explores time travel, but there is a real paradox that brings this idea shockingly close to reality: the twin paradox. This thought experiment, rooted in Einstein's theory of relativity, challenges our fundamental understanding of time and space. It's not just a fascinating puzzle, it offers a glimpse into the mind-bending nature of modern physics, where time can stretch, shrink, and behave in ways that defy common intuition. The twin paradox begins with a simple scenario. Two identical twins. One remains on Earth, living their everyday life, while the other boards a spacecraft that travels at speeds close to the speed of light. After completing their journey and returning to Earth, something extraordinary happens. The traveling twin is younger than the one who stayed behind. But how is this possible? Since they started with the same age, shouldn't they have experienced time in the same way? The answer lies in Einstein's theory of special relativity, which describes the relationship between time, space, and motion. One of its key principles is that time is not absolute. Rather, it is relative to the observer's motion. This means that the faster an object moves, especially at speeds approaching the speed of light, the slower time passes for it compared to a stationary observer. This effect, known as time dilation, is at the heart of the twin paradox. For the twin aboard the spacecraft, time moves more slowly due to their immense speed. To them, the journey may feel like only a few years have passed, but for the twin on Earth, where time flows at its usual pace, decades could have gone by. When the traveling twin returns, they find their sibling significantly older, while they have barely aged. This isn't just a theoretical concept, it's a real effect that has been confirmed through experiments involving high-speed particles. At first, the paradox seems to raise a symmetry problem. If motion is relative, couldn't the traveling twin argue that their sibling was the one moving while they remained still? Why should the traveling twin experience slower aging? The resolution lies in the fact that the two twins take different paths through space-time. The traveling twin undergoes acceleration and deceleration as they leave Earth, turn around, and return. This breaks the symmetry of the situation, whereas the twin on Earth remains in a single inertial frame of reference with no such changes in motion. The twin paradox isn't just a thought experiment, it has real-world applications. For example, time dilation affects GPS satellites orbiting Earth. Due to their high speeds and the weaker gravitational field at their altitude, their onboard clocks experience time differently than those on Earth. Scientists must adjust these clocks to keep GPS navigation accurate. Otherwise, the system would quickly become unreliable. Beyond physics, the paradox challenges our everyday assumptions about time. We tend to think of time as constant, ticking away at the same rate for everyone, everywhere. However, the twin paradox reveals that time is far more flexible than we imagine. It can stretch and compress, depending on speed and location within the universe. This concept has been confirmed through numerous experiments and observations. The implications of the twin paradox extend into philosophy, raising profound questions about time, existence, and identity. If two people can experience time differently, what does that mean for our understanding of aging, memory, and reality itself? If time itself can behave so strangely, what other surprises might the universe hold? One of the most intriguing aspects of the twin paradox is how it bridges the gap between science fiction and science fact. Ideas like time travel, interstellar exploration, and life at near-light speeds often seem fantastical. But this paradox demonstrates that such concepts are grounded in real physics. The question isn't whether time dilation is real, it's how we might one day use it to explore the cosmos. At the same time, the paradox serves as a humbling reminder of the limits of human intuition. Our brains evolved to navigate a world where speeds are slow, distances are short, and time feels constant. The twin paradox forces us to step beyond these everyday experiences and think in terms of a universe that operates on entirely different scales. It's a testament to the power of human curiosity and imagination, allowing us to glimpse a reality far beyond our senses. So, what does the twin paradox teach us? More than just a quirk of physics, it is a profound insight into the nature of time and space. It challenges us to rethink our assumptions about reality, question what we know, and embrace the strange and wondrous truths of the universe. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that even the most familiar concepts, like time, still hold mysteries waiting to be discovered. Schrödinger's cat. A cat locked in a box is both alive and dead at the same time. How is that possible? This is the thought experiment at the heart of Schrödinger's cat, one of the most famous paradoxes in physics. It challenges our understanding of reality, observation, and the strange rules of the quantum world. But don't worry, no cats were harmed in the making of this paradox. It's not about feline cruelty. It's about unraveling the mysteries of existence. The story begins in 1935, when Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger devised this experiment to highlight what he saw as the bizarre and unsettling implications of quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is the branch of physics that deals with the very small, the particles that make up atoms. At this microscopic level, the rules of reality behave very differently from what we experience in everyday life. To understand Schrödinger's cat, imagine a sealed box containing a cat, a radioactive atom, a Geiger counter, and a vial of poison. The setup works like this. If the radioactive atom decays, the Geiger counter detects it, triggering the release of poison, which kills the cat. If the atom does not decay, the poison is never released, and the cat remains alive. Here's the twist. According to quantum mechanics, the atom exists in a state of superposition. It has both decayed and not decayed at the same time. Because the atom's state determines the cat's fate, the cat too is in a superposition, both alive and dead at once. This seems absurd, doesn't it? How can the cat be both alive and dead? Schrödinger's thought experiment wasn't meant to explain quantum mechanics, but to criticize it. He wanted to show how strange and counterintuitive quantum theory could be when applied to everyday objects. At the heart of the paradox is the idea that in the quantum world, particles don't exist in definite states until they are observed. Before you open the box, the cat exists in both states simultaneously, alive and dead. The act of observation forces the cat into one state or the other, collapsing the superposition. This idea is known as the Copenhagen interpretation, one of the most widely accepted explanations of quantum mechanics. It suggests that reality at the quantum level isn't fixed until it's observed. In other words, observation creates reality. But this raises even deeper questions. What exactly counts as an observation? Does it require a conscious human observer, or could the Geiger counter itself be enough? If observation creates reality, What does that say about the nature of existence? The paradox also challenges our fundamental understanding of existence. In everyday life, things are either one way or the other. A light is on or off. A door is open or closed. But in the quantum world, things can exist in a state of both and, rather than either or. This forces us to rethink our intuitive understanding of how the universe works. Schrödinger's cat also highlights a major unresolved mystery in physics, the problem of scale. At the level of atoms and particles, superposition makes sense and has been experimentally verified. But at the level of cats, people, or planets, things seem to behave differently. Why do the strange rules of quantum mechanics apply to tiny particles but not to larger objects? The cat-in-the-box paradox sits at the center of this question. Interestingly, other interpretations of quantum mechanics offer different explanations. The many worlds interpretation suggests that when you open the box, the universe splits into two, one where the cat is alive and one where the cat is dead. In this view, superposition isn't about the cat being both alive and dead in the same universe, but about parallel universes where every possible outcome is realized. Quantum decoherence suggests that superposition is disrupted by interactions with the environment. In this view, the cat isn't truly alive and dead at the same time. It just appears that way because we can't measure the quantum interactions happening at a microscopic level. These interpretations show that Schrödinger's cat isn't just a paradox. It's a doorway into some of the most profound questions about reality, time, and existence. Beyond philosophy, the paradox has real-world applications. Quantum mechanics isn't just theoretical. It underpins much of modern technology, from semiconductors to quantum computers. Quantum superposition, the very concept behind the cat paradox, is what allows quantum computers to perform calculations far beyond the capabilities of classical machines. Understanding these principles isn't just a philosophical exercise. It's the foundation of technological progress. In the end, Schrödinger's cat is more than just a quirky thought experiment. It's a profound exploration of reality's deepest mysteries. It challenges us to think beyond our everyday experiences and confront the strange, counterintuitive rules of the quantum world. And perhaps its greatest lesson is this: reality may be far stranger and more complex than we ever imagined. So the next time you think of Schrödinger's cat, remember, it's not just a paradox. It's a reminder that the universe still holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. Catch 22. You need to escape, but the only way out is to prove you're insane. However, the very act of trying to escape proves you're sane enough to stay. This is the Catch-22, a paradox that traps you in a no-win situation, where every option seems to cancel itself out. It's a problem of logic, bureaucracy, and human frustration all rolled into one, making it one of the most relatable paradoxes in modern life. The term Catch-22 comes from Joseph Heller's 1961 novel of the same name. In the book, it refers to a rule in the military. If a soldier wants to be excused from dangerous missions, they must prove they're insane. But here's the twist. If the soldier applies for an exemption, they're showing concern for their own safety, a perfectly rational act. This means they're not insane. On the other hand, if they don't apply, they're willingly putting themselves in harm's way, which might suggest insanity, but also leaves them stuck in the missions. There is no escape. The genius of the Catch-22 is how it captures the absurdity of bureaucratic logic. It's a rule that creates a closed loop, trapping anyone who tries to engage with it. And while it originated in Heller's novel, the concept of a catch-22 is something most of us have experienced in real life. Think about job hunting. Many entry-level positions require years of experience. But how do you get experience if all the jobs that offer it demand experience to begin with? Or consider applying for credit. You need a credit history to get approved, but you can't build a credit history without getting approved first. These are modern-day catch-22s, situations where the system feels designed to work against you. What makes the catch-22 so frustrating is its circular nature. Every option leads you back to where you started. It's not just a matter of bad luck or tough choices, it's the system itself that creates the impossibility. You're trapped by the logic of the rule, and there's no way to break free without contradicting the rule itself. But the catch-22 isn't just about individual frustration. It's also a reflection of larger societal and institutional problems. It reveals how rules and systems, which are supposed to help us, can sometimes become self-defeating. Bureaucracies, in particular, are notorious for creating catch-22s. Think of a government agency requiring paperwork that's impossible to obtain without their approval, or a university insisting on prerequisites for a course that can only be fulfilled by taking the course itself. The paradox also raises deeper questions about power and control. In a catch-22, the system holds all the cards. The individual is forced to play by rules that are inherently unfair, often with no one to appeal to. It's a stark reminder of how systems can use logic not to clarify or solve problems, but to maintain authority and keep people trapped. Philosophically, the catch-22 challenges how we think about logic and fairness. Logic is supposed to help us make sense of the world, but the catch-22 shows how logic can also create traps when it's applied without consideration for real-world consequences. It's a warning about what happens when we let rules take precedence over human needs and common sense. One of the reasons the catch-22 resonates so deeply is that it's not just a theoretical problem. It's a lived experience for many people. From navigating complex bureaucracies to dealing with paradoxical social norms, the catch-22 is a reflection of the absurdities we face every day. It's why the term has become a cultural touchstone, used to describe everything from workplace dilemmas to legal loopholes. But what can we do when faced with a catch-22? The first step is recognizing the paradox for what it is. Sometimes, just understanding that you're dealing with a self-defeating system can help you navigate it more effectively. You might not be able to break the loop, but you can look for ways to work around it. Whether that means finding alternative paths, challenging the rules, or seeking help from someone who understands the system better. The catch-22 also reminds us of the importance of questioning the systems we live in. Why do these paradoxes exist? Are they the result of poor design, or do they serve a purpose? In many cases, catch-22s persist because they maintain the status quo, making it harder for people to challenge authority or break free from the rules. By identifying these paradoxes and calling attention to them, we can push for changes that make systems more fair and humane. Ultimately, the catch-22 is more than just a frustrating puzzle. It's a reflection of the human condition. It captures the tension between individual agency and systemic control, between logic and absurdity. And while it may not always have a solution, it teaches us to think critically about the rules we follow and the systems we navigate. The next time you find yourself stuck in a catch-22, remember that you're not alone. This paradox has been baffling and frustrating people for decades, and it likely always will. But by understanding it, we can start to see the hidden dynamics at play, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to turn the system on its head. Grandfather Paradox. Imagine a scenario where time travel is possible, and you have a time machine. You decide to travel back in time to meet your grandfather when he was a young man. However, things take a dramatic turn. While you're in the past, you accidentally prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother. This means your parents were never born, and consequently, you were never born. Here's the twist. If you were never born, how could you have traveled back in time to prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother? If you never existed, you couldn't have gone back in time to create this situation in the first place. This creates a logical contradiction, because your actions in the past seem to negate your own existence. This is known as the Grandfather Paradox. It's a classic problem in discussions about time travel and causality. The paradox challenges our understanding of cause and effect and raises questions about the consistency of time and the possibility of altering the past. To visualize this paradox, think of it like this. If you could go back and change events in a way that prevents your own existence, you create a situation where you shouldn't have been able to make those changes. This results in a paradox where the cause, your time travel, contradicts the effect, your existence. The Grandfather Paradox is not just a theoretical puzzle. It has significant implications for our understanding of time travel. If such time travel were possible, it could lead to contradictions and complex issues regarding causality and the flow of time. The Grandfather Paradox leads to intriguing questions about the nature of time and reality. If traveling back in time could result in such paradoxes, what does this mean for the possibility of actually traveling to the past? One common response to the paradox involves the concept of parallel universes or alternate timelines. According to this theory, if you were to travel back in time and alter events, you would create a new parallel timeline where the changes take place. In this new timeline, your actions would have prevented your own existence in that specific timeline, but it wouldn't affect the original timeline you came from. In this way, the Grandfather Paradox is resolved by suggesting that time travel creates branching timelines rather than altering a single fixed timeline. Each timeline remains consistent within its own context, avoiding contradictions by separating the changes into different realities. Another approach to addressing the paradox is the idea of time loops or closed time-like curves. This theory suggests that events in the past are part of a closed loop, meaning that any actions you take when traveling back in time are already accounted for in the timeline. Essentially, you might find that you cannot change significant events in the past because they are already integrated into the timeline. In this view, the paradox is resolved by the idea that the timeline is self-consistent. Your actions, even if they seem to contradict the possibility of your existence, are part of a larger, unchangeable loop of events that doesn't allow for contradictions. The Grandfather Paradox also prompts discussions about the limitations of our understanding of time and causality. It challenges our intuitive notions of cause and effect and forces us to reconsider how we think about the flow of time and the possibility of altering past events. The Grandfather Paradox is more than just a philosophical puzzle. It has implications for various fields, including physics, philosophy, and even popular culture. The paradox stimulates discussions about the nature of time, causality, and the feasibility of time travel. In physics, the paradox raises questions about the consistency of physical laws and the possibility of time travel. While many theories, such as Einstein's theory of relativity, allow for the theoretical possibility of time travel, they also imply constraints that could prevent paradoxes like the grandfather paradox from occurring. For example, some physicists argue that certain conditions, such as the need for infinite energy or closed time-like curves, may prevent paradoxical scenarios. Philosophically, the paradox challenges our understanding of determinism and free will. If time travel were possible, it could lead to questions about whether our actions are predetermined or whether we have the freedom to alter the course of events. The paradox forces us to grapple with the implications of altering past events and the potential consequences for our understanding of reality. In popular culture, the grandfather paradox has inspired numerous works of fiction, from novels to movies, exploring the complexities and consequences of time travel. These fictional portrayals often play with the paradox in creative ways, highlighting the challenges and potential solutions to time travel dilemmas. Looking ahead, the grandfather paradox remains a valuable thought experiment for exploring the boundaries of our understanding of time and reality. While time travel remains a theoretical concept, the paradox provides insights into the challenges and limitations that would arise if such phenomena were possible. In summary, the grandfather paradox is a compelling puzzle that prompts us to reconsider our notions of time, causality, and the nature of reality. By examining the paradox and its implications, we gain a deeper understanding of the complexities associated with time travel and the broader philosophical questions it raises. Value paradox. Why is water, which is essential for life, so cheap, while diamonds, which have no real survival value, are so expensive? This is the value paradox, also known as the diamond-water paradox, and it challenges how we think about worth-utility and the things we value in life, first articulated by Adam Smith, the father of modern economics. This paradox has puzzled thinkers for centuries, revealing surprising truths about human decision-making and the nature of value. To understand the value paradox, let's start with the basics. Water is vital. We need it to drink, to grow food, to clean, to survive. Without water, life, as we know it, would end. Diamonds, on the other hand, are essentially luxury items. They're used for adornment, industrial tools, and symbolic gestures, like engagement rings, but you could live your entire life without ever needing a diamond. So why is it that water, which is essential, is often free or costs very little, while diamonds, which are non-essential, are staggeringly expensive? The paradox lies in the difference between two types of value utility and exchange. Value utility refers to the usefulness of something. Its ability to satisfy a need or want. Water has enormous utility because it's indispensable for life. Exchange value, on the other hand, refers to what something can be traded for in a market, and this is where the paradox emerges. Water has high utility but low exchange value, while diamonds have low utility but high exchange value. The resolution to this paradox lies in a concept called marginal utility, which explains how value is influenced by scarcity and context. Marginal utility is the additional satisfaction or benefit you get from consuming one more unit of something. Think of it this way. If you're stranded in the desert, dying of thirst, a glass of water would be priceless. It could save your life. But if you're at home with unlimited access to clean water, an extra glass has little value because your basic needs are already met. The value of water depends not just on its overall importance, but on how much of it you already have. Diamonds, in contrast, are rare. Their scarcity means that each individual diamond has a high marginal utility because they're not easily available. People are willing to pay a premium for them, Even though they don't have the life-saving utility of water, the value paradox shows us that value isn't just about necessity, it's about context, availability, and perception. This paradox has profound implications for economics and human behavior. It reveals how markets operate, not on absolute value, but on relative value. People don't pay for how important something is. In an abstract sense, they pay for how much it's worth to them, in the moment, given their needs and circumstances. This is why luxury goods, which are scarce and desirable, command high prices even if they have little practical use. The value paradox also challenges us to think critically about the things we prioritize and pursue. It reminds us that value is often subjective, shaped by culture, society, and individual preferences. What one person sees as valuable, another might see as unnecessary. Diamonds, for example, are prized in many cultures as symbols of love, status, and wealth, but their value is largely a social construct. Water, on the other hand, is often taken for granted because of its abundance, even though it's the foundation of life itself. In modern economics, the value paradox has been resolved through the theories of supply and demand. Water is cheap because it's abundant and easy to access in most parts of the world. Diamonds are expensive because they're scarce and difficult to mine, refine, and bring to market. The interplay between supply-demand and marginal utility creates the price differences we observe, but this resolution doesn't diminish the paradox, it deepens it. It forces us to recognize how easily scarcity and perception can distort our understanding of worth. The value paradox also holds lessons for how we think about the broader economy and global issues. Consider water again. While it may be inexpensive in places with abundant access, in drought-stricken regions or areas with poor infrastructure, clean water can become a highly valuable and even unaffordable resource. The paradox reminds us of the fragility of abundance and the importance of managing resources wisely. On a more philosophical level, the value paradox invites us to reflect on the things we truly value in life. Do we prize the essential but often invisible resources like water, air, and community? Or do we chase the rare and glamorous like diamonds and status symbols at the expense of what really sustains us? It's a question that goes beyond economics, touching on our priorities as individuals and societies. Ultimately, the value paradox is more than just a quirky economic puzzle. It's a lens through which we can explore the complexity of human choices, the intricacies of markets, and the values that shape our world. It teaches us that value is never absolute. It's always contextual, dynamic, and deeply tied to how we see ourselves and our place in the world. And perhaps that's the paradox's greatest lesson, that what we value says as much about us as it does about the things we value. Friendship paradox. Why do your friends seem to have more friends than you? It's not just in your head. It's a real phenomenon called the friendship paradox. This counterintuitive idea suggests that on average, your friends are more popular than you are. How is that possible? And more importantly, what does it reveal about the way we interact, connect, and compare ourselves to others? Let's start with the math. Behind the paradox, imagine a social network. Not the kind on your phone, but the web of connections that links people together. Some individuals have only a few friends, while others are social butterflies connected to dozens or even hundreds of people. The friendship paradox emerges because people with lots of friends are more likely to be your friends. Why think of it this way? If someone has 100 friends, they have 100 chances to be connected to you, while someone with only 2 friends has just 2 chances in a network. The popular people act as hubs. Disproportionately, influencing the average number of friends your friends have. This mathematical quirk means that when you compare yourself to your friends, you're more likely to be comparing yourself to someone with above-average popularity, and because of this bias, your friends on average will seem to have more connections than you do. The paradox isn't just about self-perception, it's a reflection of how networks operate from social circles to the internet. But the friendship paradox doesn't stop at numbers. It has profound psychological and social implications, especially in an age dominated by social media. When we scroll through platforms like Instagram or Facebook, we often see the highlights of other people's lives, vacations, parties, achievements shared by our most connected friends. This creates the illusion that everyone else is more popular, more successful, or more interesting than we are. The friendship paradox explains why this illusion is so pervasive. We're naturally more exposed to the lives of the most connected individuals, amplifying the sense of comparison. This can have a significant impact on mental health. Research shows that social comparison is a key driver of anxiety, envy, and even depression. The friendship paradox reminds us that these comparisons are often based on a distorted perspective. Your friends might seem more connected, but that's largely because of how networks work, not because you're less valuable or less connected yourself. Interestingly, the friendship paradox isn't just a curiosity. It has practical applications in public health. For example, it's used to identify influential individuals in social networks. During a disease outbreak, health officials might target vaccination campaigns or public health messages to people who are more connected, as they're more likely to influence others. By leveraging the paradox, we can improve the spread of helpful information and curb the spread of harmful misinformation or diseases. The paradox also sheds light on the dynamics of influence and inequality in networks. In any network, whether it's a group of friends, a professional community, or a social media platform, connections aren't distributed evenly. A small number of individuals often hold a disproportionate amount of influence. The friendship paradox reveals how this inequality shapes our perceptions, interactions, and even opportunities. But perhaps the most profound lesson of the friendship paradox is what it teaches us about perspective. It reminds us that our view of the world is always partial, shaped by the connections and relationships we have. Just as your friends seem more popular, your perception of other aspects of life, success, happiness, or wealth, might be skewed by the people you're exposed to. The paradox invites us to question these perceptions, to recognize their limitations, and to focus on what truly matters. The friendship paradox isn't just about numbers. It's about understanding how we relate to others and how networks influence our lives. It challenges us to rethink the way we compare ourselves to others, to see beyond the surface of popularity, and to appreciate the unique connections we have. Because in the end, it's not about how many friends you have, it's about the depth, meaning, and quality of those relationships, and no paradox can take that away from you.